Today I'm going to be talking about everything that I knit in 2024. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Knee Knits. My name is Amy and here I talk about all things knitting, and today is one of my favorite videos to sit down and film, and that is going through every single project that I knit in the past year. I really love taking the time to gather all of my projects from the past year, even though it is a lot to get through and look at, and just sort of reflect on the things that I made, the things that I loved, and maybe talk about things that I've learned over the past year of knitting as well. I'm a knitter based out of Boston. I live just north of the city, have lived in Massachusetts my whole life, so New England Knits is my unofficial name, but the official name is Knee Knits. And if you're a returning viewer, thanks for joining me today. You might notice my setup's a little bit different. I'm kind of in the middle of redoing the craft space, the filming space, just a little swap of some furniture arrangement, and I got some new lights to film with, so that's really fun. So a few housekeeping things before we get into all of the projects. I'm going to be sharing everything that I finished in 2024, so some of the earlier projects are actually projects that I knit in the majority of 2023, and everything is going to be found in my Ravelry page. If you're looking for specific specs like grams of yarn that I use for each project, my specific gauge after blocking, measurements of all of my garments, those are all in my Ravelry notes. I do keep pretty specific notes for every project, so you can find the link in the description box or search NE Knits Amy on Ravelry to find me. That's all online, and you can always shoot me a DM on Instagram or an email if you're looking for specs and don't use Ravelry. So let's start with the first finished project of 2024. This is my October sweater. It's a pattern by PetiteKnit. This is a top-down raglan sweater. It's very oversized. I think I wear this with almost 10 inches of positive ease, and I really loved knitting this. This was kind of my Christmas cast-on of 2023, and I think I finished knitting this in less than 2 weeks just because I was so enamored by it. The yarn that I used was a combination of Sorella Yarn's Cashmere Sock, which is the variegated yarn. I used the color People Mover, which is this beautiful blend of mostly blues and a little bit of purple. And then I did hold it with a lace weight strand of silk mohair. I used the silk mohair by Assayer in a light blue color, and it quickly became one of my favorite silk mohairs to use and wear. It is just so soft and so luxurious feeling. The sweater is knit from the top down. It features 2x2 ribbed details and has a pretty deep raglan shape, so it does create a pretty wide body and pretty wide sleeves that don't have too much of a taper. I also love the split hem detail that it has. I think it just looks really like fun, and it's definitely a fun style. The back ribbing is a little bit longer than the front ribbing, and this is kind of like a sweatshirt vibe sweater. It definitely feels very casual because it is so oversized, and if I were to knit this again, I probably would size down from the recommended size in the pattern just because I do like a lot of positive ease, but I think this taught me that I have a maximum capacity for positive ease in raglans, and I think this 10 inches of positive ease was just too much, and I don't really find this the easiest to style in a professional setting because it's so slouchy looking. But if you're looking for that big slouchy sweatshirt style sweater, the October sweater is a great pick. This is the Robin Beanie by Sari Nordlund. It is a 2x2 ribbed beanie that's knit from the top down. I knit this out of Originally Lovely Pura in the color Dusk. This yarn was gifted to me, and it's a 100% merino yarn. The color Dusk is this beautiful heathered light pink color. This beanie I wear all the time. It's super warm because it does feature a double folded brim. Because it's knit from the top down, you have to start with a small circumference cast on. I actually had some issues where the amount of stitches that it asks you to cast on was too many for me to close the hole, so I actually had to modify it and cast on half the amount of stitches that it called for, and then do a rapid increase to double the amount of stitches in like a row 0 before I actually started the pattern. So I don't know if that's because this yarn is really thick or if there truly were too many stitches to be cast on with the small circumference cast on. And then the increases for the crown, I honestly don't really love. I feel like I didn't really like how it stretched out the ribbing here. You can see kind of the inconsistent tension from the increases of the crown. So if I were to knit this beanie again, I would not do it top down. I would just do it bottom up and then do the crown decreases. Not in the pattern, it would kind of have to be my own pattern, but I just didn't really see the benefit of having like a fiddly cast on and then uneven tension in the crown just to knit it top down, where you can get the same exact style beanie when you knit bottom up. Definitely a really fun hat to wear. I love this tall style of beanie. I think it is really stylistic. I kind of like the tall crowns. I really love how it looks. It's a good neutral pink that matches a lot of stuff, and I definitely wear this a lot to keep myself warm in the winter. These are a pair of vanilla socks that I really just made to show off the yarn. This yarn is called Sugar Cookies by the Kinetic Knitter, and I just love this variegated yarn. It does really remind me of sugar cookies. It has just this really like fun pale pink beigey base with all these beautiful speckles that I just really liked knitting in this stockinette sock pattern. For vanilla socks, at this point in time, I kind of just do my own thing that I have memorized, but I did originally learn my vanilla sock pattern from the Crazy Sock Lady, who has some YouTube tutorials that you can follow. They're knit cuff down, feature a heel flap and gusset, and to me are just like a good go-to pattern when you're trying to show off a fun variegated sock yarn. I do wear all of my knit socks pretty frequently, and I wash them with my regular laundry because I knit all of my socks out of superwash yarn. They have tended to hold up pretty well in the washing machine. I do air dry them, and you'll notice that some of my socks have more wear than others, but I find that 4-ply sock yarns are my favorite because they don't get like as fuzzy as fast compared to like a 2-ply sock yarn. These 4-ply yarn socks have held up over the past year, and I'm looking forward to continuing to wear them. This is an April cardigan by PetiteKnit. This is actually the second April cardigan I've made. I do love this pattern. I think it's just a great, if you're looking for a basic v-neck cardigan. This one has a really nice shaped shoulder and sleeve cap. It has almost a saddle shoulder that's knit contiguously, and then it has some increases for the sleeve cap that almost mimic a set-in sleeve style. I knit this out of Estelle Yarn's Highland Alpaca DK, which was gifted to me by the Twisted Pearl Yarn Studio. The Highland Alpaca DK is a blend of 60% alpaca and 40% Highland wool. This is in the color charcoal, which is just this beautiful kind of heathered gray color that just makes a very good basic cardigan that I can wear with literally anything. This works for so many different outfits. I did modify this April cardigan to have a double knit button band that I used the champagne cardigan pattern instructions for. That's another pattern by PetiteKnit. The April cardigan does call for a 1x1 ribbed button band, which I do like, but I did want to go for a little bit more streamlined of a look with the double knit button band. This cardigan did teach me that I'm not a fan of alpaca blended yarns, which is kind of surprising. If it's not identified as a baby alpaca or a Sari alpaca, I find them to be a bit itchy. So this cardigan is a bit itchy for me. I'm pretty sensitive like around my back neck with the alpaca, so I have to wear this cardigan kind of with long sleeves and like a high crew neck so that way it doesn't irritate my skin. So I wouldn't really opt for an alpaca wool blended yarn in the future unless it's a Sari alpaca, but I do love how this cardigan looks and fits. This is one of those projects that I did knit the majority of in 2023. A lot of my garments from 2023 and early 2024 were knit too tightly and therefore have smaller dimensions than intended. I knit this on 4mm needles, probably should have knit it on 4.5mm needles. It features only 1 inch of positive ease on me as opposed to the suggested, I think, 3 inches of positive ease in the April cardigan. It might be more, but I'm not sure. This was actually one of the few cardigans I finished in 2024. It was not a cardigan year for me. I do wear cardigans a lot, I don't knit them a lot, so maybe 2025 will be a cardigan year. We'll see. This is the Brownstone Beanie by Tori Yu. This I really love knitting. It was such a great stash buster because you can knit the Brownstone Beanie in the adult sizes with just 1 skein of fingering weight sock yarn. And it features the folded brim, which I really love. It's an all stockinette hat and has this really fun crown shaping. Now the Brownstone Beanie has kind of an ingenious design where it uses 2 different gauges, and you do have to knit it with a sock weight yarn because you knit the brim single-stranded with 1 strand of yarn at a tighter gauge, and then for the body of the hat you actually hold 2 strands of the sock or fingering weight yarn together at a different gauge, and that allows you to get this much hat with just 1 skein of yarn, 100-gram skein of yarn. I really liked knitting this pattern. I found it pretty easy to follow. The construction is a little bit similar to the Oslo hat by PetiteKnit if you are familiar with it. In fact, I found that Tori Yu's pattern does explain the short row turn much better than how PetiteKnit describes it in her Oslo hat pattern. Now the crown decreases I did have some laddering with, and that's something that I need to look into if I knit this again. It does mention in the pattern that you are at risk for laddering and to like be careful for that, but it doesn't really say how to be careful for it. So that's something that maybe I wish the pattern went into, or had like a link to a video tutorial about how to like tighten up my gauge there. So I might have to do some digging to figure out how to prevent this in the future. Another thing I'll note about this pattern is that the reverse stockinette portion is very long, and I don't really know why. And I actually have the issue where it kind of shows, because just the way the hat folds naturally, it's like it just barely peeks out, and I don't really need this to be this long. So if I were to knit this again, I would shorten this purl section by a lot just to eliminate any risk of it showing when I wear the hat. I do love the purple color of this hat. I think it's so fun to wear with my normally kind of neutral like winter wear. Like I have a camel coat and like a black coat, and this is just like a fun pop of color to add to my wardrobe. It is a lighter weight beanie, so I don't really reach for this on really cold winter days, but if you live in a warmer climate, this might be a good option for a beanie that isn't overly warm. This is my Laulu shawl. It's a pattern by Sari Nordlund, and this features a bunch of different cables and lace, and it's just so fun. Just a basic triangle shawl that's knit from the tip here, and then you increase out, and then you do decreases until you get to the other end. I knit this out of one skein of Sannis Garn Sunday in the color Poppy, held with one skein of Tin Silk Mohair by Sannis Garn, also in the color Poppy. It's this beautiful bright red color that I was so happy to knit with. I definitely want to use this color more in the future, definitely in a garment one day, but as an accessory, I think it's just really fun to wear and really fun to style. I usually will just wrap it around my neck like this once and then give it just a single knot, and it gives just such like a posh little look. It's just like such a fun way to dress up an outfit. Really fun pattern to knit and just really fun to wear in style. This is the Ollie sweater by Second Knit. This is an oversized drop shoulder sweater. It's knit at a DK weight gauge, and I held one strand of Woolberry Fiber Co.'s Berry Cozy sock in the color Rabbit Rump with one strand of Birch and Lily Fiber Co.'s Birch Suri in an undyed base. I really love how this color knit up. It was like the perfect distribution of speckles to add some texture to an otherwise plain knit sweater. This does feature mostly stockinette, 2x2 rib details, but it also features a really cool detail where the hem is knit with short rows to give it a high-low hem. So the front is shorter than the back hem. This is definitely an oversized sweater. I wear this with almost 12 inches of positive ease. With the drop shoulder construction, I think it's a lot better suited for that much positive ease as opposed to the raglan construction, which I was talking about with my October sweater. I feel like this just looks a little bit more natural, and this also has that very just like cozy sweatshirt feel. The Suri alpaca in this sweater is so cozy and soft. It literally feels like a cloud. It's so warm. I really love wearing this sweater. I did alternate skeins since this was a hand-dyed yarn, and I do think that helped a lot with the distribution of the speckles. There's like no pooling or no like issues where you have like major color discrepancies, which I'm really happy with that finished result. This is the Manhattan hat by Tori Yu, and this is very similar to the Brownstone beanie in shape. You can see that crown shaping there, but this is an all 1x1 ribbed hat. And I love this hat. This might be one of my favorites of 2024. Now that it's really cold here, I've been wearing my winter knits a lot, like hats and scarves, and this has been like my most reached for hat this year because it just fits so well on my head. It's super warm. The yarn that I used is Knit Picks High Desert, which is their worsted weight base for their American grown and spun yarn. This was sent to me to try, and I'm so glad I got to try it because I really love this base. It just knit up so nicely. I feel like it holds the shape of the hat really well. I feel like the stitch definition is perfect. This is the color Quail, which was just a solid gray color. You do knit this hat from the bottom up, so I did opt for a tubular cast on, which I think looks really clean and is definitely worth the effort to put in if you have an exposed brim on your hat. And I love the way the decreases look on this beanie with the 1x1 ribbing. You don't have any risk for the laddering that happened on the Brownstone beanie, just something about the way these stitches are knit instead. It looks way tighter, and I just love the shape of this hat on my head. I don't know why. I just feel like it has the perfect amount of like hugging my head, but the crown is tall, but there's not a weird cinch. Like, this looks great. I need 10 more of these hats. And the gray color is just like the perfect neutral to pair with literally anything. One thing I did struggle with in this pattern was the end where you have to close up the crown. I opted to do Kitchener stitch to close up the crown, and I could not line up the 1x1 ribbed with the Kitchener stitch. It just didn't work, even though I found a tutorial that said how to do it, like with the 1x1 ribbing. I don't know if I just didn't follow the tutorial correctly or if the tutorial was wrong, but it didn't work for me. So you can see there's a little bit of a jog, which honestly is not that big of a deal because when I'm wearing the hat, you can't really see like the very top of the crown. But there are also instructions in this pattern to do the crown closing with a 3-needle bind off, where that seam ends up on the inside of the hat, and that I think will eliminate any of these issues that I encountered with the Kitchener stitch, and that's what I'm going to do when I knit this hat again. And I certainly want to knit this hat again. I know there are a few different variations of the pattern, like a sport weight pattern. This is the worsted weight pattern, and there's also a bulky weight pattern version. So I'm excited to try more Manhattan hats in my future. So I made the Berlin scarf as well last year. This is a pattern by Susanne Müller, also known as Paula Strict on Instagram. And this scarf is just a kind of standard scarf. It kind of mimics a lot of scarves that you'll probably see at the mall or in commercial markets. It's just a plain knit stockinette scarf that features wide fringe. The yarn I used for this was from Originally Lovely. It is their fluff yarn, which is a blown yarn that features baby alpaca, some wool, and some polyamide, which is the like chainette core of the yarn. This yarn is so soft and fluffy. I think the name is the perfect name for the yarn. They did send me this yarn for this project because I hosted a knit along with Originally Lovely. That was really fun. Everyone made fluffy scarves and it was a great time. I feel like the scarf itself knit up kind of like quickly for what it was. I mean, it is a lot of stockinette knitting. You knit this on a 16-inch circular and it's a tube, so that way you can close up the tube and have stockinette on all sides. I used 6.5mm needles for this and about 5 balls of the fluff to get the whole base of the scarf, which was about 5 feet long. I wanted it to be a length where I could loop it around my neck like this once, but I also wanted it to be worn where I didn't loop it and I didn't want it to drag on the floor. So for me, it ended up being about 5 feet long, which I thought was the perfect length. I do wear it both ways. If it's like super cold, I'll like get this really tight around my neck and tuck this into my jacket. If it's not that cold and I'm just kind of wearing this as like a stylistic point, I'll just like put it once around my shoulders and it looks super chic. I do remember the fringe being so tedious. Like if you are knitting the Berlin scarf, please mentally prepare for the fringe. They were not fun, but worth the effort because I love how they look. I love wearing this scarf. This is another piece that I am reaching for all the time now this winter, now that it's brutally cold out, and I would love to have another one just to wear, maybe in a fun pop of color. But I don't know if I'll put in the time to knit another one, we'll see. So there's my Berlin scarf. These are the summer camp socks. It's a pattern by Zielinski, and it is a free pattern on Ravelry, so definitely would recommend it. It features 3x1 ribbing and these fun little athletic inspired stripes. The yarn that I use for mine is Sorella Yarn's nylon sock in the color 1989 from the Taylor Swift collection. And it's this really fun variegated with some purples and pinks and some lilacs and some brown as well. And then for the accent color, I used the Sorella Yarn nylon sock in the color Bunny Slope, which is this really fun, like pale minty green. So really fun project, knit cuff down. I wear these all the time. They fit really well because they have some ribbing in them, which I always love. And it was really fun to see these colors being knit up, especially the variegated, because I didn't know that it was going to do this cool like stripy pattern. This is definitely a situation where the pooling of the variegated yarn was in my favor. I think this is just so fun to wear. There are my summer camp socks. This is the Stick Season sweater by Rebecca Clow, also known as the Crayabea. This is a drop shoulder sweater pattern that features this fun alternating rib texture around the front yoke and the back yoke. It does feature these fun little details like this ribbing line that goes down the back, as well as the same ribbing detail that goes down The side of the sweater, which you can see right there, 2x2 ribbed accents, features a nice squishy folded collar. I do love the color. This is definitely one of my like stronger colors to wear, this very deep hunter green color. This is Fuzzy Peach Fibers Dreamy DK Base, which is their 100% superwash merino yarn in the color Midnight, which is from their Hello Pumpkin collection. I think the green color and like the slight variegation of the tonal yarn really shows off the stitch pattern well. I feel like the final fit I'm a little bit iffy about. Like I want to love it, but I don't. And I think that's because I don't really like the short rows that were incorporated into the sleeve. Now I knit size 3 for myself, which was going up a size. I was truly like in between sizes 2 and 3 for this pattern, and I opted to go for size 3, which was increasing the amount of positive ease, maybe a little bit past the suggestion in the pattern. And because it has so much positive ease on me compared to the recommendation, the drop shoulder is like pretty low on my arm. There are short rows here that kind of make a little wedge right where you pick up the tops of the sleeves. And because this point is so low on my arm, it kind of bulges, because I think those short rows are supposed to kind of cap off your shoulder a bit if your drop shoulder was higher like the pattern photos. I've tried reblocking it and drying it in different ways because maybe I thought it dried the wrong way, but I think it is just the way that the pattern was knit. So I don't love wearing this as much as I wish I did. I do have the option to rip out the sleeves and redo them without the short rows. I think that would probably solve my issue. Of course, I don't really want to do that because this is a finished sweater, but it might be something to consider to give me like a little bit more excitement about wearing this sweater. This pattern looks great on everyone else that I've seen, so definitely give this pattern a try if you are into it. I don't think it was poorly written. I just think I got something going on with the sleeves, so maybe I'll fix that one day. Next up is the Stella quilt cushion. It is a pillow pattern by Laura Penrose. I had a lot of fun knitting this. I knit this out of a mini set from Sevilla yarn that was gifted to me. This is their Winter Tonals collection, which I feel like is just a really nice combination of colors, and it was really nice to not have to do the hard work of picking the 8 colors for my star motif. I knit this at a DK weight gauge, so I held the fingering weight mini skeins double for the star, and then for the accent color, or like the main body color, I used Sevilla Yarn's Classic DK in the color Townhouse, which is this beige color that I had used to knit a different project and frogged it and ended up repurposing it for this pillow. This is a really fun potato chippy project. I feel like watching the motif grow and seeing how all the colors came together was really fun, and the pattern is really well written, so I thought it was very easy to follow for such a complex construction pattern. I knit this to fit a 20 inch by 20 inch pillow form that I got at Joann. So I was able to meet gauge using 4mm needles and used up most of the 10-gram minis for each of the star points. The front was really fun to knit. The back was not fun to knit at all. This was such a slog. It is a lot of knitting. This is a lot of fabric too. I was surprised at how much yarn that I used for this pillow. I ended up using 250 grams of the DK weight yarn for the whole backing, as well as the little extra points here. The pattern does have instructions on how to do an envelope enclosure, so if you want to be able to remove your pillow from the pillowcase, you can do that. I opted just to knit the backing and then sew it closed, which I'm happy with. And if I were to knit this again, I might even opt for doing like a fabric backing. I'm not really someone who sews, but maybe I could figure out how to make this just out of fabric and save myself the knitting time as well as the yarn usage. So there's my Stella quilt cushion. It was a really fun way to use up some mini skeins. It looks really beautiful in our living room, and I love getting to see it every day on our couch. These are the Hibernal socks by Summerlee Knits. This I knit out of Night Bright Yarn Co.'s Bright Sock Base, which is a 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 4-ply sock yarn, and I love this pattern. It's such a good use of mock cables and ribbing to have such kind of like a timeless and classic design that I think shows off either a solid color yarn or a really light variegated yarn. This pattern was really easy to memorize. It's knit cuff down, and I totally would knit it again. I love the way that it knit up and the way that it looks. It's just like a great sock pattern. I feel like a lot of people have knit the Hibernal socks, and I am totally on the hype train. They're just such an exciting twist to like an otherwise plain ribbed sock. And if I were to knit these again, I would probably opt for a color that is a little bit less variegated than what I used. I find that even though this is a pretty like light variegated yarn with some speckles, it still takes away from the stitch pattern, and I would love to see this in a solid yarn. I feel like it would look fantastic. I did opt for a shorter than usual cuff for this sock, and I find it a lot more wearable than some of my other socks that have a really long cuff. So I think this taught me that I don't really need to knit my sock cuffs too long, which is kind of nice because then they go by a little bit quicker. This is the Kuutar Wrap Cardigan by Sari Nordlund. This I knit out of Knitting for Olive Merino and Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair, both in the color Putty. Putty is this beautiful, very light gray color, and the Kuutar wrap features this really nice lace panel that goes down the front. It is a V-neck cardigan that features I-cord ties, so you can tie it off around the side of your waist. I enjoyed knitting this. It's knit at a very lightweight gauge for the yarn that it calls for. The fingering weight yarn held with the lace weight silk mohair is the recommended yarn combo, but the suggested needle size is 5 millimeters, and I ended up using a 5.5 millimeter needle to get gauge. So it does create a very open fabric. You can see the fabric here. It's like a little bit see-through, and I did have some tensioning issues with my sleeve pickup. I feel like you can see a lot of kind of like uneven tension, and it just doesn't look as professional and as crisp as some of my other knits that are knit at a tighter gauge. So for me, I wouldn't really opt to knit something at this loose a gauge in the future with this yarn combo, but I do still love wearing this cardigan. It is definitely something that I can wear to work really easily. It's very classy, and I feel like just adds a little bit of pizzazz if I just want to like dress up without too much effort. And I think this did knit up pretty quickly because it is such an open gauge. The fabric grows at a pretty high rate, so this was a quick knit. I feel like anything with lace and following a lace chart is very addictive to knit because you just want to get to the next row and you just want to keep knitting to see the lace chart grow, and this made every row like very exciting because there was something fun to do, whether it be a shaping increase or just adding to the lace pattern. These are another pair of vanilla socks. However, these are my custom fit socks that I made based off the formula or a bunch of different formulas found in the book Custom Fit Socks Knit to Fit Your Feet by Kate Atherley. This book I really enjoyed reading, and it basically goes through everything you need to know about knitting socks that are custom fit to your exact foot measurements, and a lot of different foot measurements like your leg circumference, your like ankle circumference, the ball of your foot circumference. It all takes all those factors into account and helps you create like the best fitting sock. So this is kind of an experiment for me to kind of understand a little bit more about sock construction. The book does specifically like only cover heel flap and gusset socks. However, you can knit them top down or toe up. I opted to knit mine cuff down. The yarns that I used are a combination of Filcolana Arwetta in this olive color for the heels and the toes and the cuffs. And then the variegated yarn for the body of the sock, I used Arcane Fiberworks sock in the color Blessed Bluebird that was gifted to me. I did learn a lot about the anatomy of my specific feet while knitting these socks, which was kind of fun. I think I learned the biggest thing is that I have a low arch, so I need to have a shorter heel flap and gusset than what is normally recommended. You can see this looks kind of short, and that just fits my foot a little bit better than other sock patterns. That is something that I do take into account when I knit other sock patterns now, is I don't knit the heel flap as long. But besides that, these socks are knit based off of a negative 10% amount of ease, which I personally like my socks a bit tighter than that. So these are truly knit to negative 10% of ease around all of my foot and leg. And to me, that's just a little bit too loose. So I do still continue to knit my socks a little bit tighter, but definitely a great learning exercise and a great book that I would recommend if you're into all that sort of math and grading and getting your perfectly fit, custom fit socks. All right, we're at the point of the year where I started knitting some spring and summer knits. So this is T number 1, which is a pattern by My Favorite Things Knitwear. This is a saddle shoulder t-shirt, and it features a boxy fit. It has wide sleeves, and I really love the finishing of the neckline on this sweater or this t-shirt. It just looks so professional and was what drew me to the pattern initially. I used the recommended yarns for this t-shirt. I used Gepard Garn Wild and Soft, which is a fingering weight yarn that has both wild tussa silk and merino in it, and then I held it with a strand of lace weight 100% cashmere by Gepard. This was like a real treat to knit with. It was yarn that I had bought while I was in Oslo, so that was really fun to finally use it, and such a fun yarn combo that creates like a subtle marling, and it feels so luxurious because you have that silk and that cashmere in there. Really nice. Now, the saddle shoulder construction was something that was kind of new to me. You start by knitting the shoulder rectangles, and then you do a lot of picking up along the sides. There's a lot of cutting your yarn and restarting at different points. There are short rows in here to give it a good shape. You can see the neckline increases along the front of the t-shirt. There are like folded hems everywhere, so definitely a lot going on with this pattern. I did really love how the collar was made. You do bind off and then sew down the collar, which was very time consuming, but to me was worth the effort. And I remember this was one of those patterns that looked really weird before blocking. I think because of all of the different like knitting in different directions and picking up stitches everywhere, it just really cinched in weird ways before it was blocked. So it was something where I had to trust the process, and it really blocked out beautifully. It has an incredible amount of drape, and I wear this with about 7 inches of positive ease, so it definitely has that boxy fit. It has a cropped fit on me, so I can wear it with high-waisted pants or shorts. And I do love this t-shirt, and I want to love it more. I think that this style of saddle shoulder and like boxy fitting shirts is just not the best for my frame. I don't really know what it is about it. If I were to pinpoint it, maybe it's that it just looks too slouchy on me, and because I am kind of like petite and pretty short, I think it might just overwhelm me because it's so boxy. I want to love it more. I think maybe I wouldn't really opt for knitting this same style in the future for myself. I'm not totally against it, but that's just something that I don't really reach for this shirt as much as I wanted to because I feel like I don't really love how it looks on me. Maybe I just need to give it another chance in my wardrobe this year. This is the Chrysler top by Pernille Larsen, and I knit this out of the Knitting for Olive book, but the pattern is also available separately. This is a camisole that's knit out of Knitting for Olive pure silk. I held the pure silk single, and this is in the color cream, which is this really nice crisp off-white color. This tank top features an all-over twisted rib, but it is a modified twisted rib. It's not 100% twisted. There's actually, like, you alternate between rows of regular 1x1 rib and then twisted rib. You actually knit this from the bottom up, so you start by casting on here at the bottom. You knit the body all as one piece, and then you divide out for the triangles at the front. I really liked the bottom up construction. I feel like it was way less fiddly than doing these types of camisoles where you start with the triangles and go down and then have to connect them all. So I really liked the construction. There's a lot of really intentional shaping that I think gives this camisole a really good fit. I really love the way that this fits. I feel like it has the perfect amount of ease on me. I do wear this with 5.5 inches of negative ease, which sounds like a lot, but it really does fit well. I don't really find any issues with this being see-through, and I just really love this tank top. I feel like I've knit a few of these like triangle style camisoles before, and some of them have been misses, some of them have been hits. This one's definitely a hit. I just love the way it fits. It's so comfortable. The pure silk fabric is great for the heat of summer. I just feel like the finishing details of this cami are really professional, and I haven't really experienced too many issues with this stretching out. I think because it has so much negative ease, it really does fit well. Overall, I'm really happy with my Chrysler top. This is the mini mock neck tank. It's a pattern by Jessie Maed Designs, and this I knit out of Sorella Yarn's silk sock base in their color Strawberry Fields, and this was gifted to me. The mini mock neck tank I was really excited to knit this year because a lot of people knit it in the summer, and I feel like it's just one of those patterns that looks good on everyone who's knit it. And it also uses not a lot of yarn. So I only had one 100-gram skein of yarn, and I was able to get this tank top with less than 1 skein of the fingering weight yarn. I remember knitting up this pattern really quickly. It was just really fun to knit. I had a lot of fun knitting with the superwash merino and silk combo yarn. I believe it's a 50-50 split, so it is super drapey, kind of cool to the touch. and just overall like was really fun to work with because it's different than what I normally knit with. And I also really love, in terms of the pattern, I love how you knit the armhole finishing at the same time as doing the armhole, so you don't have to go back and do any finishing, like you don't have to go back and pick up the armhole, which is nice. Now I did have some issues with fit on this tank top. I think the front yoke depth is too deep. You can see when I wear it there is a lot of ruffling around kind of like the underarm. It does show a lot more of my like preferred bra than I would like. I would love to knit this again and experiment with shortening up the yoke depth so that way it actually fits a little bit better. Definitely need to play around with this pattern and try it again maybe this year. This is my Sevilla blouse by PetiteKnit. This is another summer knit, but it's a long sleeve knit, and I knit this out of the recommended yarn combo, which was Essayer Palette and Essayer Trio 1. Essayer Palette is a 100% cotton yarn, and Trio 1 is a blend of linen and cotton and lyocell, and that's a lace weight yarn, so holding them together gives a very breezy, cottony feeling sweater. I was drawn to this pattern for the boat neckline. I'm a big fan of boat necklines. If you can't tell, I feel like the shirt I'm wearing is like a non-knit version of the Sevilla blouse. But this one has pretty basic shaping. In fact, maybe to the point where I was disappointed that it didn't have more complex shaping, meaning that the front and back are just like rectangles, and then you do pick up for the neckline at the end and then give it that sort of rolled raw edge finish. But I kind of prefer drop shoulders when they have the angled shoulder line, and this just didn't have that. So in one sense, it wasn't the most advanced design technique, and I kind of prefer more advanced, but on the other hand, it is very beginner friendly, so I would definitely recommend this pattern if you're looking for a simple beginner friendly drop shoulder blouse or top. I did wear this a lot. I find it super comfortable to wear. I love that it's in black because it's just really easy to style. It's super comfortable. I kept it to more of like a cropped length, and I made the sleeves pretty cropped to kind of like a bracelet length, and it just has that really casual, beachy summer vibe that I really enjoyed wearing, and I'm looking forward to wearing it again this summer. This is the Cumulus Tee O-neck by PetiteKnit. I had knit the Cumulus Tee previously with the V-neck and wanted to try the crew neck or the O-neck version, and I love this one just as much. I knit this t-shirt out of Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the color Putty, and I love the pure silk fabric. I've said that before. It's just really wearable and really comfortable to wear on hot days, but also really comfortable to wear on cooler days. It's just like an all-around good fabric. I really enjoyed knitting this piece. It does have very clean lines. I love the raglan shaping on this with just the single stitch. Just looks so crisp, and I kind of knit this to the ideal length where I can tuck it into high-waisted pants, and it has sort of that long sleeve, short sleeve look, which I really like. I did eliminate the decreases for the I-cord that are in the pattern for both the sleeves, and for the bottom hem, I just didn't really want that sort of ballooning that happens if you do the decreases, so that was the only major modification that I made. If you haven't knit a Cumulus Tee yet out of pure silk, I definitely would recommend it. They are a slog, it's a lot of knitting, it's fingering weight yarn, and it's a not stretchy yarn, but worth the effort. These are some of my most worn knit pieces, and I just love them so much. This is the DRK Everyday Sweater. It's a pattern by Andrea Mowry. This is a circular yoke sweater all over stockinette stitch with 2x2 ribbed details. This was such a good project this year. I knit this out of Juniper Moon Farms Patagonia Organic Merino in the color Violet, which was gifted to me by the Twisted Pearl Yarn Studio. This yarn is so nice. It's like a more rustic, sticky merino yarn, but when you knit with it and when you block it and wash it, it just softens up, it blooms, it has almost like a velvety feel, and the yarn itself has a little bit of texture and color that I think just adds so much dimension to the sweater without like being distracting at all. I was a big fan of this project. I feel like it's one of my best fitting sweaters. As you could see, I usually do a lot of positive ease garments, and this is one of the first sweaters I made that didn't really have a lot of positive ease. I think in total this has about 2 inches of positive ease on me around my full bust. And I think I discovered I really like circular yoke sweaters, which is funny because I know a lot of people don't really love circular yoke sweaters, but something about the way that this one fits on me, I feel like it has the perfect yoke depth, and I love the way that it's kind of form-fitting, but it's not really too form-fitting. It's just like a great piece that I can throw on, and it just looks so polished. I love the 2x2 rib details. The neckline is really crisp looking. I love how this also has really long ribbing at the bottom of the sweater body. I do recall doing some sweater surgery on this one because I had knit the whole thing and I was going for a cropped fit, but I made it too cropped, so I had to go back and add some stockinette to the sweater body, but I didn't want to undo all the ribbing that I had knit already, so I actually cut my knitting and then knitted more of it and then Kitchenered on the ribbing again. It was a successful sweater surgery. You can't tell at all where I did it. After blocking, it almost disappeared completely, which I'm really happy with. Was definitely worth the time to not reknit all of that ribbing, and I'm really happy with the final fit of my DRK everyday sweater. This is the Urban Beanie by Tori Yu. Once again, another tall crowned beanie that I knit this year, and this I knit out of the Lamb & Kids Trio DK base, which is a blend of superwash merino and cashmere. Really luxurious. This was gifted to me by the Lamb & Kid when I got to visit them in Bainbridge Island this year, which was really fun. I love this color. It's like this really bright kind of Celtic green color, and the Urban Beanie's got sort of a cool, unique crown shaping, which you can see here. It is all 2x2 rib. As with all the Tori Yu patterns, you do have the option to do a double folded brim or a single folded brim depending on how much yarn you have. I opted for the double folded brim. There's something about the shape of it that I don't love. It's just a little bit too cinchy at the crown. I think this might be like too tight because in Tori Yu's pattern photos, the brim kind of like sits out like this, which is what I wanted, but you can see mine like cinches in like that. So it's either too tight or it might be because this is a superwash merino yarn, and that kind of, I've heard that the superwash hats, they kind of cinch in more like this than non-superwash hats that will keep their shape a little bit. And I did stretch it with blocking and it just cinched right back in. So again, I'm not really sure the root cause of why it does the cinching. I have some ideas, so it does make me hesitant to knit this hat again, but it was a fun hat to make. I do really like Tori Yu's writing style, and her decreases in this hat are really neat. She does a trick, which I guess I won't share because it's a paid for pattern, but the way the decreases are done, it just looks really neat. And then this does have that 3-needle bind off at the top, which looks pretty neat, that I was talking about is also an option in the Manhattan hat, which if you put this inside out, you can see the seam. And I just really like it. I feel like her patterns are all very creative and very well written. My next finished object really sticks out within my normal color palette, and this is the Totally Tubular Turtle Tank, a pattern by Park Williams. I knit this with a new yarn from Sevilla yarn. This is their Sari DK base, which is a really soft and fluffy chainette blown Sari alpaca yarn. It's actually very similar to the Originally Lovely Fluff, and this colorway is called Blank Space from the Eras collection, and it's this beautiful bright kind of green yellow color. And I had a lot of fun knitting this project. It really was kind of a serotonin knit for me. It was something like out of my comfort zone. It's at a bigger gauge, so it knit up super quickly, and it was just really satisfying because I could finish it in just a few weeks. I kind of knit mine with the intention to wear it as a slip over or a vest. I love pairing this with a long sleeve white shirt. I feel like it just looks so good together. I love the tall collar on this. The turtleneck is just so soft. This is just such a really comfortable yarn to wear that keeps me extra warm. So I've honestly been reaching for this a lot in these cold winter days because the collar is really cozy and I feel like it fits pretty well. Similar to the mini mock neck tank, you do the armhole finishing as you knit the armhole, which is really awesome because you don't have to go back and pick up any stitches. That being said, it is kind of basic where you don't have anything under the arms. You just have your raw picked up edge here or your raw cast on edge, and it does have some fun features at the bottom like a split hem. And it's definitely something that I would love to knit again in the future just because it was so satisfying to knit, and I do find a lot of use for this in my wardrobe. Would love to go for something more of an Amy color next time, maybe something like a cream or like a charcoal or a blue color would be really fun. This is a Musselburgh beanie and it's a pattern by Ysolda Teague. This I knit out of one skein of Ruby and Rose's yarn soft rose base, which is their 4-ply sock yarn base, a 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon blend, and this is in the color Invisible String. Also a Taylor Swift inspired colorway, definitely a lot of those this year. And this beanie was just a really fun knit. I do talk highly of the Musselburgh hat. This is the second one that I've ever knit, and this one was just as fun as the first. I did use almost the full skein of yarn for this hat to be able to get it to a length where it does have a folded brim, which I really like. If you're unfamiliar with the Musselburgh, it's knit from crown to crown, and you start with crown increases, and then it's a long stockinette tube, and then you finish with crown decreases. So it makes for a really warm hat, even though it's knit at a fingering weight gauge, because you fold it back in on itself, and then if you add the folded brim on top of it, like I did, you have almost 4 layers of fabric surrounding your ears. So I find these hats to be extremely warm and versatile, and because it's all stockinette fabric, I feel like it really molds to your head in a really comfortable way. So like once you start wearing this for a while, it'll just like form fit to your head exactly how you want it to be. And Musselburgh is definitely one of my more reach for beanies, and I definitely will be knitting more in the future, probably going for maybe a solid color yarn so I can have maybe more of a neutral color one. But this variegated yarn was super fun to knit with. I love how the colors played out in the fabric, and even though it's a highly variegated yarn, I feel like it still is kind of neutral because the overall tone is kind of like a purpley gray. It's not like in your face, high contrast, different variegation. So I really love this hat. We're getting into my fall knits because my next finished object were a pair of Halloween socks that I knit out of Hobie's Halloween sock wool. So this was a self-striping sock yarn that I just had a lot of fun knitting just this vanilla sock pattern out of, and it's just great because it kind of knits itself. You keep wanting to knit and get to the next stripe, and that was exactly the case with this color here. I did add a mini skein from my stash. This was a green color from Honey and Quill, just a different mini that I had, and I thought it was the perfect pairing for just a quintessential Halloween color palette. And this was really fun because I knit it throughout the month of October, and I did get to wear them on Halloween, which was fun. I really like incorporating seasonal themes with some of my knitting, especially socks. It just keeps things a little bit more exciting and feeling festive with the holidays. Pretty standard vanilla sock. I used 2x2 ribbing at the cuffs and then knit a heel flap and gusset. This is another example of me using a shorter heel flap and gusset in different sock patterns just to get it to fit my foot a little bit better, and then I did a wedge toe at the bottom. The Hobie sock yarn is definitely, I wouldn't say scratchier, but it's a little bit tougher of a sock yarn. It's not super smooth or soft like some other superwash merino yarns, but this is a superwash yarn that I have ran through the washing machine, and it looks great. I feel like these are definitely going to be really hard wearing because they are kind of a stiffer yarn. Yeah, I've only worn them once. It's one of those things where I had a lot of fun knitting them for October, but I don't really want to wear them if it's not October, so these kind of might take a back burner in my closet until next October. And yeah, maybe that's a downside of knitting seasonal socks, but was fun nonetheless. This is the Amy sweater, a pattern by PetiteKnit that I finished just recently. We're now getting into some recent knits, so if you've been following my channel, these will be a little bit more familiar to you. This is a top-down raglan sweater that features rolled edges and 2x2 ribbing details and is generally a bit oversized, and I used the recommended yarn for this, which was Sanasgarn Pure Gint. The color I used is called Cocoa Nibs, which is this really beautiful deep chocolate color. I love it, and I really loved knitting with the Pure Gint. Pure Gint is a little bit scratchier. It's a 100% Norwegian wool, and I just loved knitting with it. I loved wearing it after blocking. It definitely softens up a lot. It's extremely warm, but I think it's going to be long wearing as well. I don't think I'm going to have too many issues with pilling just because it has that nice sort of hearty feel. I do really love the details on this Amy sweater, specifically the wide folded collar. Even though this is a folded turtleneck, it is very wide set, so it doesn't really suffocate my neck, but still feels very warm. Similar to the October sweater, this does have a deep raglan and pretty wide sleeves, but this is not as exaggerated as the October sweater. I wear this with with about 7 inches of positive ease, which to me is like the perfect spot for an oversized raglan sweater. But I've been wearing this a lot. Any time that I had the chance to, I'll throw this on just because it feels like a sweatshirt. It's so cozy, it's extra warm on these cold winter days, and would totally recommend the pattern if you're looking for something with this style. This is the Aurelia pullover by Sari Nordlund, and this is a very long ongoing project for me that I had started in 2023 and finally finished it in November of 2024. This Sari Nordlund pattern features all over cables and baubles, and for as much patterning as there is on the front, there is just as much on the back. So a very involved knit. This is all charted. It does feature raglan shaping, so you do start at the neckline and you do raglan increases. That includes this really beautifully detailed raglan shape, and then the sleeves continue a very similar cable pattern to the front. This was definitely the piece that I am the most proud of in 2024. I did knit this with hand-dyed yarn. I used Sorella Yarn's Classic DK in the color Folklore, which is a really fun, like very pale purple gray color. And I feel like it just shows off all of the texture so well. However, I did have some issues, or maybe didn't really love working on this project because I did have to alternate the skeins to make sure I didn't have any color blocking, and alternating skeins with such a heavily textured pattern was just a lot of yarn management that I wouldn't really want to do to myself again. But I'm glad that I finally got this finished up. It was also one of those projects that blocked beautifully, the cable's really relaxed, and I wear this with about 4 inches of positive ease. This is definitely one of those sweaters that I feel like I can dress up or dress down really easily. I do love how it looks and how it fits. However, I still think I don't really have a preference for raglan cabled sweaters. This is the only raglan cabled sweater that I've made, but I feel like compared to the drop shoulder cabled sweaters that I have made, like my Moby sweater, I just like a little bit more of the slouchy look with the drop shoulders than with the raglan. And maybe I just needed to knit this a size bigger to give myself more positive ease, but I feel like if I'm to be super critical, I wouldn't really opt for a raglan cabled sweater in the future, but I'm really happy with this nonetheless. My last pair of socks for 2024 are these really fun Christmas socks, and the pattern that I used is the DRK Everyday Sock pattern by Andrea Mowry. The DRK Everyday Sock pattern is an all over 2x2 ribbed sock that's knit from the toe up and features a fleagle heel. So a little bit different than the classic heel flap and gusset socks that I normally knit. I really enjoyed knitting this pattern. I feel like I like toe up socks. I find them very engaging and they feel like they go faster than cuffed down. And the yarn that I used was a Christmas sock set by Honey and Quill. This was their Merry Merry sock set from last year, 2023. So I actually had started some socks with these last year, ended up not finishing them, frogging them, and then redid a pair of socks this year for Christmas. So I knit these throughout the month of December. I finished them before Christmas. I got to wear them on Christmas, so that was really fun. And one thing that I didn't really do very well with these socks was knit them to fit my feet. They're actually comically large. I think it's a combination of I knit the foot too long, like you start at the toe here and you have to know when to stop before you start the gusset increases, and I just knit my foot length too long. And then I also think I could size down 1 or even 2 sizes with this pattern. I did do the recommended size based on my foot measurements. I think maybe my gauge is just a little bit looser, or these grew a bit with blocking or with wearing them. They just got really bunchy around my ankles and heels, and honestly kind of got uncomfortable as I wore them throughout the day just because they kept getting looser and looser and just not feeling very comfy. So I might have to gift these to someone who has a larger foot than me, but I'm happy that I knit them and looking forward to trying out this pattern again in a smaller size and making sure that they fit my feet well. The fleagle heel construction was really fun. I really like how it looks. It certainly is a unique look. Would definitely recommend this sock pattern if you're looking to try something different with the fleagle heel. I did modify my cuff to be 1x1 ribbed, and then I ended with a sewn bind off. In the pattern, I think you just knit the 2x2 ribbing and then bind off from there. So I wanted it to look a little bit cleaner with the cast off, so that's what I did here. Yeah, so that was my last sock of 2024, and we're moving into just a few more projects. This is my Carl Johan sweater. It is my most recently finished knit that I did finish before the end of 2024. This is a pattern by Pernille Larsen from the Knitting for Olive book, and I knit mine out of a combination of Sevilla yarns cashmere sock in the color Evie, which is a fingering weight yarn, held with a lace weight silk mohair. I used Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the color petroleum green. This sweater is a top-down turtleneck sweater that features a contiguous saddle shoulder with the nice shaping that kind of looks like a set-in sleeve. This is very similar construction to the April cardigan, and I feel like paired with the turtleneck just looks so classy. This is like elevated knitwear. This is something that I can wear to work and feel like $1,000,000. It just feels so professional and polished, and I absolutely love this sweater. I really like this sweater construction because it's all knit in the round. It's all contiguous and seamless, so you start with the collar and then you just go through all of the increases for the sleeves and the body, all in the round. You never have to like stop or cut yarn or anything, which is great. I did modify my sweater a bit to have tapered sleeves, which is not in the pattern. The pattern does call for a bishop sleeve, so you just knit the sleeve straight and then you do rapid decreases right before the cuff, and then you do the ribbed cuff. So I actually calculated out how many decreases I would need to do with my sleeve length, so that way I could have just a standard tapered sleeve, and I did end up with the same cuff stitch count as in the pattern. So I really like that modification. I feel like this makes this look like a bit more streamlined of a sweater and less of like a blouse. So that was a modification that I'm really happy with. I love the way that the yarns look together. This is another one of those colors that I just love wearing, and it's also probably like a knit's core color. I actually had a comment that said, oh, every time I see this color, like this petroleum green, I think of you, Amy, and that was really fun to hear. So this is just something that might also be one of my favorite pieces of 2024, even though it is a late addition. This is definitely something that I see myself wearing for years to come and really looking back on as one of my most loved knits. And we're on to the final project of 2024, and these are a pair of penny gloves, a pattern by PetiteKnit. These just made it into this video. I actually finished these on December 31st, which was not intentional, but this was such a quick project, and I'm so happy to finally have a pair of hand knit fingerless gloves because these things are so practical. I did knit these out of one of the suggested yarns, which was Filcolana Alva, a lace weight 100% alpaca yarn that I held double on 3mm needles for the penny gloves. These are a very basic pattern, definitely beginner friendly. It's all stockinette in the round. I use magic loop method to knit them. You start at the bottom and do increases for the thumb, and then you just have a little bit of finishing at the thumb and the top of the wrist. They fit great. The penny gloves come in one size, and I didn't really have any issues with sizing. I do knit tighter than most pattern designers, and I have smaller than average hands, so I think by following the needle size in the pattern, I ended up with smaller than suggested penny gloves, which fit me quite well. I love how these turned out. They fit great. The color that I use is called Bordeaux, which is this beautiful deep burgundy color. Honestly, another Knit's classic color. I keep saying that, but purple, teal, maroon, those are the tops, and maybe navy too. So love these gloves. I'm excited to get a lot of use out of them this winter. I've already used them a few times. They're great for driving when your steering wheel is too cold in the morning. So big fan of the penny gloves and would totally make more. Would love to make more as gifts. I'm just shocked at how fast they knit up. I think I knit both of these in less than a week. So they felt way faster than like a beanie, and they felt faster than a pair of socks, of course. So I'm really happy with these, and it was really a great way to end off the year with all of my knits. So those are all of my projects that I knit in 2024. Thank you for watching, and if you supported my channel in 2024, thank you so much. It really meant a lot to me. Making these videos and knitting is just one of my favorite things to do now. It really is such an amazing thing that I get to create so many wonderful things out of my hands and out of yarn, and I'm really excited to continue knitting in 2025, of course. If you're curious what I'll be knitting in 2025, you can check out my winter knitting plans video, which has a bunch bunch of different projects that I'm hoping to cast on this winter. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at ne_knits, where I post project photos and updates on my projects as well, in addition to posting videos here on YouTube. If you're looking for more info on any of the projects that I shared today, feel free to check out my Ravelry page, which is linked below in the description box. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye.